That was a wonderful talk to follow. So I think kind of dovetails nicely with some of my own interests, which I'm particularly fascinated with the proliferation of stuff. And the term used for it at times is the study of material culture and the ways in which people interact with, value their things, and kind of create meaning out of their collections of things, and how they navigate through the space of shopping or consumerism, essentially. So my talk is loosely framed around, I'm going to be presenting a couple pieces of my own artwork to sort of set the stage for a larger discussion, hopefully, about issues of craft, and craft as a verb, in the sense of either the DIY craft movement that seems to be kind of coming up, and this idea that people today might be trying to find new meaning in actually producing their own objects, and how that can kind of tie in with issues of industry and consumption. So diverting objects, repurposing production, and crafting an alternative. This is a piece from a little while ago. It's called Pacific Super, and in parentheses, Stonehenge. And I was working with, I downloaded an image of Stonehenge from the internet, this sort of iconic, religious symbol, and went shopping at an Asian grocery store in Daly City called Pacific Super, and bought only objects that would recreate a good model representation of it. So by rephotographing it, for me it became this kind of comment on a globalized process of how we've sort of become kind of removed from a potential connection with either spaces or real places, and wind up having an interaction with objects in different ways. This is a work, it was a recent work actually. This is from a show that just opened yesterday at the Dissasset Museum in Santa Clara. This is called Everything Must Go, Gray Market. And it's a collection of images downloaded from used electronics for sale on eBay and Craigslist, and then printed out and mounted onto foam core and foam, and kind of reconfigured into a physical sale of sorts. So on the front end, it looks like a display that you would see at a flea market, or maybe even Circuit City. But on the back, it's a complete prop. So in thinking about stuff and stuff for sale, the consumption of new goods is definitely something that folks strive for in terms of getting satisfaction from. But there's also a really interesting kind of market of secondary items for sale, things that have already gone through an initial consumer process, and then now is being resold and turned into what can be sometimes referred to as like a gray market. It's users directly reselling goods themselves to another user, which is, for me, kind of fascinating because it keeps propelling the object. Another work a series that I worked on is called Black Market, and I was thinking about marketplaces in third world countries in which everything from consumer items to produce to all sorts of other things for sale fall out of the normal channels of corporate money. A lot of times you can't buy certain things overseas very easily, and so a local culture will create the kind of approximation of it. So black markets arise, all sorts of kind of proxy objects become for sale. And I was downloading images that I was finding online from tourist photos of the Philippines, and then literally blacking out the objects just to kind of get a sense of the space that they inhabit, and maybe even create a kind of abstraction of this void of black markets. It's kind of interesting to see how folks wind up looking like they're interacting somehow with them. She looks pretty happy though. And another artwork a series of works that I've made are the kind of reconfigurations of iconic modernist furniture from the 1920s to 1950s. This is called 5 Days Towards a New Modernism, Beijing. after Charlotte Perriand, and it's made out of recycled cardboard, paper, magazine clippings, tape, foam, and plastic. So in kind of remaking a high-end modernist piece, but using only rubbish that I could find, it became a way for me to attempt to sort of strive towards a high ideal, but using only local and everyday materials. And so the reality is that, you know, most people can't afford or have the things that the consumer culture pushes on you as being desirable. And so you make do. You make do with the scraps, you make do with kind of the things around you to create an approximation of it in some way. And what interested me about this work too is that I felt like I was working on in a similar logic to how a shanty is built, in that to create a shelter out of scraps, you use whatever is necessary and whatever is available. So some of the details on the work, it's you know, magazine clippings, foam, all sorts of just leftover materials found on site at the gallery. And another work is By Any Means Available, after Charlotte Perriand. And so the series is pretty large at this point. There's been a lot made in different parts of the world. It also led up to another series of works called Labor Relations, after Stickley, after Morris. These are upcycled international shipping boxes, produce boxes, and moving blankets, all built to specifications for a early 20th century Stickley chair. And so in kind of referencing the arts and crafts movement, which was a movement that really honored artisan labor in the production of their furniture and objects, there's this attempt to kind of create a connection between the labor today for those who work in the farm workers or the fields, and also just the packing industry and the way that goods are shipped back and forth, to sort of the attention paid to detail on craftsmanship in the past.